this is Yaroslav, and welcome to another Entrepreneur's Journey interview. And today I'm very excited to have a special guest from my hometown in Brisbane, Stephen Baxter. This is going to be a little bit of a different call to perhaps what you might normally get from the Entrepreneur's Journey podcast, because Steve is an entrepreneur on a big scale. So we're not talking about your niche websites, selling a few ebooks. This is a bit of a bigger sized companies, but we have many stories to go through. So Steve, first, thank you for joining me today.
No worries, Yarrow. Thank you very much.
So first thing, I've got to find out, are you actually from Brisbane, originally born and raised?
No, I'm actually born in Cloncurry in northern Queensland, and I was raised in Emerald in the Bowen Basin and Rockhampton in central Queensland.
So that makes you a country boy?
Well, definitely makes me a Queenslander. I left Rockhampton when I was quite young. I actually joined the armed services at age 15, regular soldier, and served almost 9 years 3 years in Victoria, a couple of years in Brisbane, and then 3 odd years in Adelaide. Okay,
so just to put this in perspective, already that's a bit strange compared to what you are known for. Like, you're on this call because you sold a ISP or a tech company here in Australia. You were in partnership with, I've done a little bit of research on that. That was a $370 million sale to another tech company, and you had an ISP before that. So how did the Army fit into this? Like, just didn't know what you wanted to do, or?
Probably as a kid, dreams of serving the country and all those sort of things, all those worldly visions you have when you're 14 and 15 years old. That led me to enlisting in the apprenticeship program in January 1987. It's really curious when you have a 25th reunion. I had that just recently. That was a lot of fun. You're old when you go to a 25th reunion of anything.
Yep.
Especially when it's a bunch of Army guys who still think they're 21. That was a great weekend up in Townsville. But I through the Army, I ended up in Adelaide. I was working. So in the Army, I was responsible for repairing of certain types of electronic equipment, and pretty well anything in the Army that wasn't radio or radar was in the electronic sphere. So we did a lot of optical equipment, night vision equipment, standard optical binoculars. I did equipment courses for the laser guided missile, the RBS-70, the Rapier air defense missile. I did radiation protection courses for industrial radiation issues, for things like X-ray equipment. So it was a very, very wide, all-encompassing field.
You must have been technical then from the beginning. You had an interest in that sort of area.
Yeah, I did, and when I was there, I started doing. So I left school at grade 11, so I didn't quite finish high school. I did a couple of part-time years at university because I wanted to. I felt obviously I didn't have a full education, to say the least, and so I felt I was missing something there, and I got into computing, which was interesting, and then in 1993 I had this weird subject to do called Unix, and one of my instructors sent me a couple of floppy disks of Linux, effectively, and it didn't work, and I had to end up logging onto the VAX VMS system, and that's good. Ask me about the VAX VMS again later on, because there's a fantastic end to that story.
Okay.
As well. So, and downloading like 100 and something floppy disks of the original SLS soft landing system. It was a 0.99 kernel, and after many weeks of frustration, I got that booted. Attached and as an experiment, I attached some dumb terminals to the serial ports, and I had a lot of fun with it. And then sort of realised that, my God, if you actually went from dumb terminals to modems, then you can sort of be an ISP, and that grew into sort of taking a home loan deposit at the time, which was $11,000, and installing 16 phone lines into a house we didn't own. It was actually an Army married quarter,
right?
And starting an ISP pretty well.
Okay, yeah. So how old are you then?
So I would have been, so it was in 1994. So 71, so what's that, 23, I suppose? Yeah, 23.
Okay, so early 20s. You borrowed $11,000, or you saved up $11,000?
We had saved $11,000 as a home loan deposit.
Right,
yeah.
And then you just basically to start an ISP back then, you had to put a bunch of phone lines into a property, and I'm assuming set all the software up, and away you go.
Yeah, very much so. So, and that was, and I tell the story, and the true story. And when I realised this a couple of years ago, it sort of staggered me a bit. But I'd only actually seen a web browser over someone's shoulder before executing this, and it was actually seeing that early version of, it wasn't Netscape then, it was called Mosaic. And it was brought out by the National Centre for NCSA Mosaic, and I was actually seeing that, and seeing that it was just when the CGI Common Gateway Interface specification was released, and I realised, oh, you can really interact with these computers over this, and that's when I knew the internet was going to be big. And the scariest moment was when I talked to my fiance at that time. We weren't married at that point, but we were engaged. And it's fully talking to her about this crazy idea I had, and fully expecting her to say no, and then she said yes. That was a pretty scary moment.
And I'm assuming the idea was to make a living off this ISP company you were going to start.
Very much so.
And how did that go? This is a while ago now, in terms of especially in internet years, to start an internet company and get customers using it. I'm thinking, it was AOL was probably the biggest player coming up around that time.
In Australia, it wasn't. I mean, Aussie Mail would have been the biggest player. Aussie Mail were the ones who eventually acquired us. So I had that going in the suburban house. So I took a year off leave without pay in May 1995 to fully work on the business, because obviously I was still sort of serving. Mm-hmm. And the business just went off.
How come?
Spending time on that was just, I'd managed to get out there and actually, the internet was getting very popular as well, or getting more popular on the adoption curve. I managed to get out, and my promotion strategy was basically dropping flyers into computer shops.
Right.
And that was it. And just getting around and talking to the computer store owners and giving them deals and signing them up for free and doing the promotion. And so being able to concentrate on that was good.
Wow. That's quite the simple marketing strategy for nowadays.
That's social media, 1995.
Exactly. It just shows how you get on a crest of a wave that's about to crash. How I won't say easy, but I guess how fluid the process can be. You don't have to worry too much. People just are hungry for what you're providing, and you're at the right place at the right time.
Yeah, look, I mean that's true. I mean there were plenty of internet service providers who didn't last a month. However, it didn't probably last 6 months or 12 months. So
what made you different?
I always like to think I knew what it cost to provide a service, and I made sure I charged more. No, very common. I mean, you had people out there signing up almost Ponzi scheme internet services. So you had people out there, providing it at a cost that we knew the cost to provide it. And when people sell it cheaper, they can't last long. Unfortunately, they have the impact of distorting the market in the meantime. But that we went through that. We ended up moving out of the house. Well, actually, when I discharged from the army, I had to move out of the house, and I thought, what am I going to do? I sort of didn't have the cash flow to be able to move the telephone lines that I'd installed. And so, believe it or not, the house next door came up for sale. So we actually bought that house next door. And the only reason I bought that, if it was on the other side of the house, if it was on the left-hand side instead of the right-hand side of our house, I wouldn't have bought it, because I couldn't have actually literally dug up the telephone lines and relocated them next door, because it was closer to the exchange. And that's what I did. I actually physically relocated, and I was actually recovering from a knee reconstruction, knee surgery at the time. I actually got out there with a mattock and a pick, and I retrenched it and put it in.
Wow.
So we had 3 hours downtime from that exercise. That wasn't too bad at all.
Wow. You talk about being hands-on. That's about as hands-on as it gets.
But as cheap as it gets too, isn't it?
Well, I guess so. Yeah, that's the benefit of being hands-on. So I really love to get to the next business. So how did this one wind up, in the sense that you did get acquired by Aussie Mail, which back then was the largest ISP, which back then would have been a Malcolm Turnbull company too, I believe.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, I didn't actually meet Malcolm at the time. I met Sean Howard and David Spence, but Malcolm was involved.
Just for the people listening who are not familiar with Australian politics, that was a once leader of the opposition party here, and a very well-known politician who is probably one of the most wealthy politicians from selling Aussie Mail too. So. Obviously, that was a time of consolidation for ISPs, and you were one of them.
Oh, it's been I've heard the consolidation story of ISPs now for 15 years, and it's still happening. So I don't believe consolidation stories.
Okay.
So I took on a business partner in October or November, I think, of 95. We moved into so Chris had 45%, I had 55%. And Chris, I'm still really good friends with Chris Foote. He's a lovely bloke down in South Australia. We then moved into the city, so we actually relocated the business and really attacked the consumer market. And went gangbusters, just went crazy. We sold that in 2 tranches to Aussie Mail in 99 and 2000. At the end of 2000, we relocated to Brisbane, which was always our desire.
So there was 5 years there of really growing that business.
Yes.
Right, and how big did it get? Like when you eventually sold it, how many employees? You know?
We had about 65, I think it was about 58 or something FTEs, about 68 or 65 altogether, employees, full-time equivalents FTEs. So we had, when I left the business, we had 34,000 users. We were about the 7th largest ISP in Australia at the time, and we only had a point of presence in Adelaide. So that was pretty cool.
And how did that happen, Steve? Is this word of mouth? Because it can't be just flyers being dropped into computer shops.
No, well, so eventually we graduated to having a $500 ad in the Saturday's Advertiser, the local newspaper in Adelaide, the computer section. And that got us a little bit of business to start with. And this is the weird effect of advertising, right? And after a while, we realised that it wasn't really getting us bang for buck, that word of mouth was really what was doing it for us. So if I'd pulled that ad out of that newspaper, our business got so many phone calls about asking if we were about to go broke, because the sort of timeline for ISPs then was they got some money from somewhere, they'd get out there with these unrealistic pricing plans, they'd put these big ads in the Saturday Advertiser computer section, and you knew when they're going broke because the ads disappeared. So these people would ring up saying, "Oh my God, you're going broke." No, we're not. So we kept the ad in just to keep our customers happy.
Wow.
It got us very little work, but word of mouth. So customer support. We had a simple philosophy: when the customer rang up, we should actually know what services they've purchased from us. Nothing more frustrates me when you ring up a service organisation and you have to tell the person on the other end of the phone what you're buying from them, so they can start to help you. So we put systems in place that allowed our staff to take control of the conversation with the customer in a very positive, forward way. Our tech support staff were instructed that to keep our customers happy, that if they were to ring up and they're having problems with Microsoft Word, you fix their Microsoft Word. If they want to be sung a lullaby before they go to bed, you sing a lullaby. And it was all word of mouth, every last bit of it.
Right. Well,
I shouldn't say the other things as well, having extremely robust systems. So going from analog modems to digital modems was huge. We actually managed to, we went from a very unreliable technology to quite a reliable technology, to like a 7% connection failure to like a 1% connection failure. So what that does for your perception of quality is massive. But that was a big investment too.
I mean, there's some great lessons right there, isn't it? A quality product and quality customer service is almost all the marketing you need. Thanks to word of mouth. So that's fantastic. Now, I'd love to talk more about this, Steve, but you have a deadline to get to. So let's move forward. You sold to Aussie Mail. Can you tell us how that went down?
Yeah, look, I was positively terrified by Telstra. So they'd launched Big Pond. Well, the initial Telstra service was called On Australia. It was partnered with Microsoft. And they came out with Big Pond. And they were doing a lot of advertising. And Telstra would, and I honestly feared that if they ever got their mix right, they would crush us overnight. They had done several things by mistake, honest accidents with respect to technical configurations and various bits and pieces that really were almost devastating to us. So at one stage they misconfigured the equipment in our premises, so pretty well no one. You can barely connect, and if you're on a 36K modem, you might have only got like a 21 or a 17K connect, which people really looked at in those days because you're only getting half speed all of a sudden, and you really noticed it. And we had no control over that, and it probably took Telstra 6 weeks to fix. And you saw sign-ups dropping off, you saw people not dialing in, and that was a hell of a worry. And I thought, and that was, I got a settlement over that one too, to be honest, because that was a shocker. But
right.
I thought if they'd really wanted to turn me off, they could. So
we should point out to overseas listeners, Telstra is the largest telco in Australia, and they own the hardware here, the infrastructure, and that's why you were so susceptible to them, because they own the wiring.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, but Telstra never did that. They never. We do have a very strong competition regulator here, so that never really came. Telstra never made it easy for people. They never deliberately hunted them down like I feared that they may one day. I think when Salter Heo came in back in 2005, that may have changed a bit. And they got a lot more vicious. So the apocalypse that I foresaw never happened. But we took money off the table in 99 and 2000, which wasn't a bad time to do it, considering what happened a year later.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so did you just go looking for a buyer, or did they come to you?
Oh, we had a few come to us. I went on one trip to the US. That's the first time I went, and I've been going ever since. I quite enjoy getting over to Silicon Valley. I sort of fell in love with that area of the world that first trip. We spoke to a few crazy Yanks over there. They really don't understand things they can't drive to. So that was a bit tough. You know, it was a realization I was going over to with that as a goal in mind. That got some of our competitors talking to us, and in respect to acquisition.
And did it go smoothly? Did someone knock on your door and say, "I want to give you this much money," and then done deal? Or
did it go smoothly? Yeah. Look, I mean, we got. Look, the transaction was smooth. There's no issues with the transaction. There was a lot of kerfuffle about the price we sold for. It was a lot less than it was all cash. I will state up front, and it was a lot less than a lot of the script deals were going for at the time. Probably about a quarter to some of the script deals, to be honest. Mm-hmm. But the script deals were also escrowed for 2 and 3 years, which when we did the deal, we had you didn't get the capital, you didn't get the relief with respect to the rollover relief. So you had to actually pay capital gains on the script, even though it was escrowed. Oh. So that was a massive problem. By the time we did the second tranche, that wasn't an issue, but the first tranche definitely. So to me, script was never an option. Therefore, the price was always less because people had less cash, right?
Yeah.
So, but 18 months later after the deal, there was very few people saying I got a bad price because everyone who took script were left with 1 cent in the dollar.
Yeah.
So, and I feel sorry for them, but it was just to me at the time, I couldn't understand how you could make script work with the arrangements for taxation in Australia.
Okay. Well, I won't ask you exactly what you sold it for, but I'm assuming you were set. Well, I won't say set for life, but you were pretty set at that point after selling out. Was it a case of I want to go on a holiday now, or let's jump into a new business?
So look, on discharging from the armed services and working in that business and selling it, I would have averaged 6.5 days a week. And the full days were probably close to 14-hour days. So at that point, I'd had an absolute gutful of it. My fitness had deteriorated to the point that I was probably dangerous. So everything does come at a price. Potentially, I didn't manage the growth of that company with respect to my personally as well as I could have. So I was very happy to move back to Queensland and do some fishing, which I did. Bought a boat and had a good time doing some fishing.
How long?
So we came back in late 2000 we came back in late 2000, and by late 2001 we'd already started pipe. So you could tell that I got pretty bored of it pretty fast.
So you got less than a year, and you wanted to get back into running a business.
Yeah. There is that. I mean, I still just turned 30, so still pretty keen. So we started. Pipe officially was registered as a company in November 2001, and we really opened the doors in May 2002. Once we'd sort of acquired the premises and built the little bit of infrastructure we needed to kick it off.
Okay, so Pipe is what was the starting vision for it?
So Pipe started out. It was cool. So Pipe actually stood for Public IP Peering Exchange. So it was all about a way to get internet service providers and telcos interconnecting more rationally than they were at the time, and probably still are. So while I was with my company in Adelaide, was called SENet. I co-founded something called the South Australian Internet Exchange, which was an internet exchange that got basically competitors working together. Because at the time we were paying like 60,000, the equivalent rates of I think it came down to, by the time I left, it had come down to about $16,000 a megabit per second per month down from effectively 60, but based on a per gig model or a per meg model. So, if we could interchange traffic locally and not pay Telstra that massive amount of money for the privilege, and that was a good idea. So it's spent a lot of time getting my competitors to cooperate. And so that was pretty well the business model of Pipe, to do that arbitrage arrangement in the middle.
You must have been so entrenched in the telecommunications and the ISP market of Australia to even think that you could jump in and get a bunch of large companies to start talking together in that way.
Well, I don't think we ever had eyes on large companies. So, and obviously the business partner at that time was Bevan Slattery. So, and he was the guy who came to me with that idea, knowing that I'd done what I'd done with SAIX. I wasn't, at the time he came to me, it was probably about March, April 2001. And I wasn't at that stage and nowhere near ready to get back into business. Mm-hmm. And so, but I gave him a hand on doing effectively some freebie consulting, because it sounded like a bit of fun to sort of pitch it towards various sort of venture capitalists and whatever. And not a good time to do it, mid-2001. The world was falling off the plate when it came to .com. Mm. So in sort of September, October 2001, we said, bugger this, we threw $70,000 each into the hat, and we went off and started Pipe. We changed the business plan radically because it was in the form that was being proposed to VCs, it was never going to work. Not that we told the VCs that, but it would never have worked. It would have been dead in the water day one. So we changed the business plan, not greatly, but enough, in that we weren't going to interconnect capital cities with fibre optic, with bandwidth and this sort of thing. So and that was what really actually it was a prerequisite for it to work.
Tell me what actually did work for Pipe, especially early days. Maybe that point where you said, okay, we actually have a going concern here, and it's doing something that makes it profitable. Well,
what did actually work? So the initial Pipe Networks business model was very simple. It was finding certain buildings in each of the mainland cities of high telco and ISP concentration, and there was typically 2 or 3 in each city. It was putting an Ethernet switch and putting infrastructure, which is essentially an Ethernet switch, into each of those buildings, interconnecting those buildings in the city. So each city was an island, but you typically had high bandwidth between these buildings, and getting carriers and ISPs to interconnect with that. And there was the real secret sauce, and I think a lot of people don't quite realise, was the actual arrangement, the actual contract that everyone by default signed onto with each other. Without realising it, they signed on to Pipe, but we applied the same rules across the entire customer base. So it was a set of rules that dictated how they were going to interconnect and interchange traffic, and we set up a little bit of infrastructure to arbiter the routing between them, to make sure that there was no routing mistakes that sort of brought everything crashing down. A little bit of software that I initially wrote called PipeDB, which thank God someone took off my hands later on and made fast and secure, because I'm really good at rapid prototyping stuff, but you don't want to look at my code with a security hat on. It's terrible. So we started with Brisbane and then went to sort of Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Hobart, believe it or not, eventually Perth. It was such an inexpensive infrastructure to maintain. We could say to customers who had a high resistance to connecting, we could just say, look, just plug in for a month and try it. We don't need to prove this to you. You just plug in, give it a go. And no one ever unplugged.
To clarify for those of us who are maybe not quite grasping the technicalities here, what you're basically doing is making the local networks work together to speed it up and make it more cost effective. Basically, get rid of the latency in the network. Is that kind of
So you imagine a world where you have 3 ISPs, for example, and each one of those connect to Telstra or connect to one single incumbent carrier for their internet access. Any traffic that's exchanged between them has to go up to Telstra and then back down to their competitor. Whereas if we become an arbiter to the middle, where each one of those connect to us for a fixed fee, not a usage-based fee, then you can send your traffic, and the routing algorithms pick the cheapest and best path effectively, bypass Telstra, and you interchange traffic without sending it through the expensive and also typically highly latent path through the carrier.
Okay, so you provide the intelligence behind that working.
Oh yeah, intelligence was easy. Well, the more what it was, we were the neutral party.
Right.
We did not have an ISP business. We did not compete with it, and this is such an important aspect to it. We did not compete with our customers. That is the single most important thing that any intermediary can do.
Right.
So, and that was hard not to do at times because there was opportunity coming left, right, and centre, and to sort of stick to your knitting and say, we're not going to compete with our customers. So in doing that, though, we got into the fibre space. So I mentioned we had these buildings in each city, and we connected them. Initially, we connected them with managed Ethernet from certain carriers. And very quickly, we realised this wasn't going to scale. We always knew it wasn't going to scale. It was just what was available at the time. And then so we started deploying our own fibre optic, our own dark fibre between these buildings. That introduced a little bit of competition with some of our customers. But no one really did dark fibre. Everyone built fibre and sold a managed service. We sold a lease to the farm to people. We really did. So
you're like the United Nations of ISPs, right? Connecting the countries together and making sure they trust you but not each other.
That's not a bad description for it, to be honest. Yeah.
It does make you sound very altruistic as well.
Oh no, there was plenty of profit involved. Don't worry about that.
So. How does this become a company that you can sell for $370 million?
So in sort of 04, probably early 04, I suppose, we realised that, hey, this is going really well. We were rolling considerable amounts of fibre. When I say considerable, we probably had sort of 10, 15 kilometres in the ground at that time. But it was fibre optic. You can probably only make more money than fibre by selling drugs. It is got just a fantastically high margin. So what we used to do is we used to go and convince a customer who wanted high speed capacity between 2 points. We used to go out to them and actually say, right, it's going to cost us, and we'd get a quote. It would cost us, let's say, $50,000-$60,000 to build fibre between point A and point B. We go to the customer and say, look, here it is. It's going to cost you $50,000 or $60,000 to build this, and we're going to rent it to you after that for $2,000 per month. Believe it or not, this was fantastic economics at the time. The Telstras and the Optuses of the world were trying to charge $16,000 a month for the same service, also with the setup. So we had a market. So we'd have our build cost covered. We'd install like 144 core cable of fibre. For $2,000 a month, we'd sell the customers 2 cores, or rent the customers 2 cores per month. So we had 142 left over to sell to other people. So every second customer we got was probably at 80-90% gross margin.
Wow. And gives you so much space to get more customers without having it's a one-off infrastructure cost, but you can keep selling.
Yeah, exactly right. But we did have some problems, and there was some certain sort of core runs and core rings that we wanted to build to allow us to access more customers. And if it's only a 50, 60, that's quite easy. If it's 150,000, you have to find a different class of customer. That might be a good deal for them, but they still have trouble finding $150,000 once up in their budget, despite how much it might save them over 12 or 24 months. So we needed to raise capital. We actually looked at selling the peering business to a competitor, and we got a fair way down the track with that until they sort of pulled a swifty on us at the last moment, just ignored our floor price and just thought we were joking about it. So out of that, we needed to raise capital, so we explored listing. And we always ran a highly structured company. We're very, I suppose, a quality company from the respects of quality procedures internally. So, we had a high degree of certainty of contracts. We have a high degree of certainty of the regulatory stance of the company. That made listing actually really, really quite not an easy process, but I wouldn't call it a chaotic process. It was measured, it was controlled. And so therefore we pursued the listing path.
And that went successfully. I think you had was it a $14 million capitalization is what I saw somewhere in some research I did?
Yeah, it's 14 million. I'm pretty sure it was 3.5. I've got my old CFO from Pipe sitting right beside me here actually. I think it was 3.5 million we raised, Malcolm. Yeah, 3.5 million. He's nodding. That's great. $3.5 million. So I think, post market cap post list was 14 mil, 40 cents a share. The proceeds of that were to build out more fibre, and in Brisbane and Melbourne, and a little bit in Sydney. I'm pretty sure. So we didn't really look back from there. We geared up quite substantially. Once again, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million, 6 million, 7 million, 8 million, 9 million, 10 million, 11 million, 12 million, 13 million, 14 million, 15 million, 16 million, 17 million, 18 million, 19 million, 20 million, 21 million, 22 million, 23 million, 24 million, 25 million, 26 million, 27 million, 28 million, 29 million, 30 million, 31 million, 32 million, 33 million, 34 million, 35 million, 36 million, 37 million, 38 million, 39 million, 40 million, 41 million, 42 million, 43 million, 44 million, 45 million, 46 million, 47 million, 48 million, 49 million, 50 million, 51 million, 52 million, 53 million, 54 million, 55 million, 56 million, 57 million, 58 million, 59 million, huge fan of repeatable quality systems. So probably the biggest thing we did in the fibre space was understand where our fibre was installed, which might sound like it's don't you do that anyway? But the number of businesses out there who didn't do it and still don't do it. So when they install a piece of fibre in the ground, the institutional knowledge of where that actually is, what manhole you have to lift up to get access to it, and because there's 144, or on the bigger counts of cable, there's 1,000 fibres in a cable. You have to know exactly which ones to pick out and cut to bring the new customer on. Because if you cut the wrong ones, then you've actually taken down another customer. So losing access to that information, and more important, the ability to efficiently access, re-access, move and change that information was so important, and what allowed us to actually that was our pivot point to take us forward to just a really, really nice fibre business.
And I can imagine, this is not you anymore digging a trench in your front lawn. You've got a team of engineers, or not just engineers, but people who are out there doing physical infrastructure installation. So it's a totally different business to an ISP in some regard then, right? Or small-time ISP versus, I guess, someone who owns their network.
Well, yeah. So we never actually had people who built network for us. We always contracted that.
Right.
So we typically had 2 or 3 contractors in every city we operated in to keep them honest. We had very, very good project managers and a very good project management team and a very good geospatial information team who basically built the network that the sales team wanted us to build. So it was very much a project management task more than a construction task.
It sounds like a huge company again, Steve, and I'd love to dive more into it, but you've got like 5 minutes left here. So
I'll give you 10, mate. How's that?
Okay. It sounds like though you got yourself into a situation where you have a big business with lots of employees. Were you stressed out again, and is that what led to the sale?
No. So look, I left Pipe as a full-time executive in early 2008. I think I'm supposed to have left in mid 2008, but I didn't turn up much after February. So
you went to Google, didn't you? If I read right.
Yeah. So look, there's only one job left in the company for me to get, and that was CEO. And my business partner Bevan wasn't about to let that go, and he would probably, on the balance, he was probably a better CEO than I could have been. Not that I would have been a bad one; he just would have been a better one, or was a better one, I suppose. So and a little bit bored, and always had a desire, as I mentioned before. I've always really enjoyed Silicon Valley, so I sort of explored working over there. I was sitting on a Google recruiting email from probably 4 years previous that I'd never bothered to respond to, and I thought, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Hit reply, the person still worked there, and had an interview, and they got me over working in Mountain View with Google in the Valley. Doing
what?
So I was a technical program manager building high-speed networks between their secret data centers. So Google had acquired vast quantities, it's quite open in the press, vast quantities of fibre optic cable across the country. And my job was to build out the infrastructure that sat on top of that to provide, terabits. They call them terabits because they're terrifyingly large. Terabit links between their data centers.
Your reputation for being good at laying cable, or at least controlling that, that's what qualified you for this?
I think that's what attracted me to it. Very much attracted me to it, or attracted them to me, excuse me. So a different environment. I went from working in a small company to working in a dreadfully large Silicon Valley-based company that really doesn't have productivity as its main driving force. So I found that adjustment quite difficult.
How long did you last?
A year, 1 year, 1 day.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing too special to that, to the actual 1 year, 1 day. It was just how it panned out in the end. So I really had to return. I had to leave California in the end because we received the offer for the takeover of Pipe. If I'd stayed in California, I would have exposed myself to substantial Californian capital gains tax. And so I really had to get the hell out of Dodge. I was ready to leave Google. I'd had enough. The project I was on changed due to various issues that we sort of changed tact on what I was doing at Google. I had to fundamentally change a few things, how they managed information internally and on their fibre side, more on the geospatial stuff again. And I'd gotten a fair bit, I think, achieved in that respect. But I also did not have the political skills required to manoeuvre an organisation of 35,000, 40,000 people. I was a little too blunt for that. I don't suffer fools gladly, so I really had to get out of there.
Okay, so you get a call back. I'm assuming the offer and the negotiation process was happening in Australia while you're in America during that time.
Yeah, look, very much so. So I was still a non-exec director, still on the board, still attended board meetings, albeit them virtually, or via telephone. So that was going through TPG, made an offer for Pipe Networks. I want to say officially in November, it might have been October, 2009, under scheme of arrangement, which is quite a lengthy court-based process. That closed in April 2010.
And you walked away, I'm assuming, an even more wealthy man than the first sale of your business. So was it time to get back on a boat?
Bought another boat.
Okay.
Look, we love the US as well. So while I was over there, I got my pilot's license. So private pilot, and I came back to Australia and converted that to an Australian pilot's license because for some reason the air over here is more rarefied than in the US, and we have extra laws for flying aircraft. So I've got a couple of planes as well. Flying is one of my hobbies. I quite enjoy that. I do a little bit of charity flying for people like Angel Flight as well. Uh-huh. So I've done a fair bit of fishing. I've ended up buying a lovely place up in the Whitsundays, actually on Shute Harbour Airfield. So we fly up, land at Shute Harbour, which is quite just near Raleigh Beach, and then park the plane under the house on the airfield. And
awesome.
Which is quite nice, yeah.
So last 3 minutes, Steve, what your current projects are obviously,
River City Labs.
Yes, so tell us about that. That's how I actually first found out about you.
Alrighty, so it's a early stage and startup co-working space for mobile and internet companies. So we like to sort of say that, you can come and grab some desk space here. If your business needs an IP address, you're in. If your business can also have an IP address, we don't care so much about you. So we're really about providing a place that's inexpensive for people to test ideas. Some people call it inexpensive to fail. Probably true, but get out there, try your crazy idea. We'll charge you $350 ex GST a month for a desk that comes with internet, access to all the shared resources. So it's real estate effectively. We have mentors, and as you know, Yarra, you've been to our events. We have events that we try and bring the community together. The whole thing, and this is a not-for-profit venture that I funded with an interest-free loan. Sort of call it interest-free loan because that way my wife thinks I might get it back one day, which I doubt I will. But so it's about me trying to do my little part to bring this early stage and startup community together. Put a physical anchor in the sand. Put a place that we can house this community and have it congeal around it.
So that's rivercitylabs.net for those interested. It is a Brisbane-based location, obviously. So it is for
it's in the valley.
It's in the valley. So it is for our Australian entrepreneurs listening in. And I think for me,
just not Silicon Valley, more like Heroin Valley.
Yeah, well, I like the Silicon Beach label we're getting more than anything. I think not that we're on the beach, but we do have South Bank. And I think the biggest point, with co-working spaces is also the social aspect. That's what was certainly missing during my early years of starting what I did. Very not social, underwear in a computer next to my bed, depressing. So, the social part I think is definitely worth highlighting of a place like River City Labs. And I think it's great that you started that in Brisbane, and we don't really have, we didn't have a lot of support for entrepreneurs. It seems to be ballooning this year, but River City Labs is certainly, paving the path. So that's fantastic, Steve. Before I let you go, just one question.
Yep.
For those people listening into this, you're probably one of the only interviewees I can really ask. If you want to go big, like, these multi-million-dollar companies, there's pros and cons to going that large, but some people out there really, really want to. Is there one tip you can give that, makes the difference to get that big?
If you want to go big, you want one tip.
Yeah, because you only have 2 minutes, so.
All right. Understand what it costs and sell it for more. I cannot overemphasize that enough. I've seen that many people who lose money gleefully. I don't understand that. Just don't.
Okay. Simple one. So,
simple one. That's it.
I was expecting, think big, don't think small, or something along those lines. But no, we can work with that. Thanks, Steve.
No worries at all. Thanks, Yaro.
RiverCityLabs.net for everyone listening in, and thanks for doing the call. And, of course, for everyone who wants to grab this interview and all other interviews with me, just Google my name, Yaro, or head to entrepreneurs-journey.com, and you can download all the other podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you very soon.